All right, I will say good morning. We managed to have an incredible daf ahead of us today. Begin by thanking our sponsors, to thank our Talmud Torah sponsors, Adam and Yudit Benzev, for dedicating all the Shurman Drushos this month in honor of their children, Jake Sarina and Rosie, and our week of learning sponsors, Yehuda and Jennifer Goodhart, commemoration of the yahrzeit of Jennifer's father, Yeshaya Zalman Ben Lazar. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Neshama will have an aliyah and the family a nechama. So we'll say with that, let us begin. Today's daf is Samech Vav, and really an incredible daf ahead of us today. So today's daf is Samech Vav. We are picking up in Yirtzeh Hashem on Samech Hey Amud Beis. And we left off Gzeira, we left off 2, 4, 6, 7 lines up from the bottom. So we'll say, so remember again, we're trying to figure out the following. Rabbi Huda, the Gemara just introduced a totally new and unrelated statement of Rabbi Huda on Samech Hamad Aleph, which was that, right, remember again, the case of the Machzis HaShekel, which was contributed. Townspeople contributed through a Shaliach. What happened? Shaliach was either robbed or the money was lost. So what happens? So remember again, the Rabbi Huda said that the Bryce said they have to contribute another set of machzis. So I'm sorry, let me say again. Townspeople contributed machzis hashekel. The shaliach was robbed or he lost the money. So he takes the shavua, depending on what occurred, depends on who he takes the shavua to, and they contribute another machzis hashekel. The Mishnah's case was then what? They found the first machzis hashekel. So now both are consecrated. So what do you do with both? Rabbi Huda, remember again, what did Rabbi Huda say? What can you do? Allocate one machzis hashekel for next year's collection. So you see from here that Rabbi Huda holds that even if something has been consecrated for this year, it can go ahead and be directed to next year's use. The Gemara then was contrasting that with the case of Yom Kippur, of the par and the sa'ir which were lost. They were lost. Therefore, again, you designated a second replacement pair, par v'sa'ir, and then before offering them up, you find the first ones. So what can you do? So Rabbi Huda says that halacha l'maisa, you have to let them die. You just let them die, right? Gemara says, Kulam Yamusu Devi Rabbi Huda. So we're trying to reconcile that. Why doesn't Rabbi Huda say that you can just use the par and sa'ir next year for Yom Kippur? Right? What's the big deal? Why do you have to go ahead and let it die? So we've been trying to figure that out. That's pretty much been our entire discussion through the entirety of Samech Hamad. So we're still in the middle of that discussion. The Gemara says, rather, Elegzeira Mishum Chatas Sha'avra Shnasa. Rather, what's the concern? The concern is like this. The concern is that the chatas of Yom Kippur must be an animal that is within 1 year old. If you go ahead and you keep it till next year, there's a concern that it may be over a year. The Gemara says, maybe over a year. Gzeirihi, Gemara says, Gzeirihi, Gufa chata shavar shnasihi. What are you talking about, maybe over a year? Of course, if you leave it till next year, it'll be over a year. To which the Gemara says something very interesting. Halo kashya. Kerebi. It's possible about an interesting case that you could have a situation where the animal could still be within its year. How could that happen? Listen to this, because everything depends on what? How you count a year. Desanya, listen to this, unrelated discussion, Shana Tamima. So we'll say, listen to this. The Torah says as follows. If you go ahead and you sell property in Eretz Yisrael, you have a certain window of redemption. So if you go ahead and you sell a home in a walled city, you have up to 1 year after, meaning you being the seller, you have up to 1 year after the sale to go ahead and redeem your property. So it's interesting, I will say. It's interesting. And after that, interestingly enough, the sale is final forever. It does not even revert back during Yovel. Very interesting halacha by border cities. Sefer HaChinuch explains that the reason why border cities are different is because walled cities. Often walled cities were border cities, right? Border cities are the front line of security of Eretz Yisrael. In order to maintain the proper security, you can't have property constantly changing hands. In other words, part of the security system of a border city is that the residents know each other, trust each other, and are able to work as a cohesive unit. If property in border cities is constantly changing hands, it erodes the security. So therefore the halacha is, if you sell a home in a walled city, you have up to a year to redeem it. But if you don't redeem it, that's it. We're done. It's not reverting back to any ancestral hands. So I will say, here's the shaila. How do you count the year? So listen to this. So the Gemara says, Shana Tmima, Mona Shlosh Meosu Shishim V'Chamisham Kaminim Osacham Divrei Rebbe. Rebbe holds a year is 365 days. That's how you count the year. 365 years, 365 days. Take a look at Rashi. Omer Mona Shin Samechei Yomim, Bein She'ibru Beis Dinas Hashana, Bein Shelo Ibrua, She'em Chalimnos Elimos Achamos. We'll say you count 365 days, even if it's an Ibr year, right? Even if it's a leap year. So therefore, again, the 1 year anniversary of the sale may or may not come out on the same calendrical date. And remember, again, even if it's not a leap year, it may not come out on the same calendrical date, depending on whether or not the months are mali or chasr. Are they complete months? Are they deficient months? You count 365 days from the day of the sale, and that's your window of redemption. That's Rebbe. The Chacham say no. Monim shnemasar chodesh miyom liyom. No, you count 12 months. So a year Abose means 1 year later on the exact calendrical date. Look at Rashi. The Chachamim omrim hakol kimoshe yisrael monin yud beis chodesh miyom liyom im pshutehi. Fine. So Abose. So according to the Chachamim, you count 12 months. So what about top of Samech Vav? Vim nis abra. What happens if it's a leap year? So nis abra lemocher. Ultimately, again, that extra month goes to the seller. So we'll say if there is an extra month, so the seller himself has an extra month of redemption. Take a look at Rashi. First Rashi, bless you. Top Rashi, Samech Vav Madalev. V'mnis abra nis abra lemocher. V'lo techlot ad sheyagia ba'osu yom ba'osu chodesh shemachar lo. So now listen to this. So according to the Chachamim, it turns out that halacha l'maaseh, if there is a leap year, so really the seller gets an extra month of redemption option. Because essentially, according to the Chachamim, you pretty much have until the same calendar day of the following year to go ahead and exercise your window, your redemption option. Now Rashi points out over here, Rebbe Meshkachas la kigon shekdishu b'yom shmini leleida so b'arv Yom Kippurim b'shana pshuta v'chi mati Yom Kippurim haba akati lo malulei shin samech yomim ela shin samech daled. So we'll say ultimately again, according to Rebbe, interestingly enough, where you have 365 days, it is possible that halacha l'maisa you can get to the next Yom Kippur depending on how the months are and still be within the 1 year window. So the idea is, so let's just jump back for just a second. So the idea that the Gemara is saying is, do you know why according to Rabbi Yehuda, if you can't keep the par in Sawyer until next year, do you know why that is? Because halacha l'maisa, you may be outside of the 1 year window for a chatas. And he says may, because it is possible to construct a case where the animal could still be within a year by the following Yom Kippur. Good. So the Gemara says, Hatinach Sawyer. So we'll say, remember again, the only animal that has to be within a year is the Sawyer. So I understand you tell me you don't want to keep the Sawyer until next year Yom Kippur, lest it be outside of the year. What about the par? Par ma'ikal meimar. So say, interesting enough, the par is 3 years old, right? The par is 3 years old. So why would there be or up to 3 years old? Why would there be a concern with keeping the par? So the Gemara says, Gzera par atu soyer. This is the same type of reasoning that we used in yesterday's daf. We're concerned that if we let you keep the par, you'll come to go ahead and keep the soyer. So the Gemara says, Umishum Gzera yamos. So because of a gzera, because of a concern that if we let you keep the par, you'll come to keep the soyer, we're going to let all of these sacrificial animals die. Furthermore, chatas sha'avra shnasa l'raya azla. Furthermore, I will say again, let's talk about this. What do you do with the chatas that's aged out? Right? What do you do with a chatas that's aged out of service? L'raya azla, literally, not a metaphor. You set it out to pasture. Right? When you age out, you're set out to pasture. So the Gemara says, Damrei Shlakish, Chata Sha'ara Shnasa, Rowan Osa, Ki'ilu Hi Omedes V'Beis HaKvaros, V'Roeh. Because also we see a chatas that has aged out, we go ahead and view it as if it is grazing in a cemetery, and therefore is simply inaccessible. The reason they call it grazing in a cemetery is because then a Kohen can't get it. Right? So it's out in pasture and you can't get it. Now look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi is a row and osa. B'chol mokum shehi ki'ilu omedes v'veis hakvaros shena kohen yochal likari vela. Avalo mechatos hamesosi ela shena kreva. Hilchach roa ad sheyipol bamum v'timaker. So I'll say, interestingly enough, what do you begin to see from here? You begin to see from here that even if something, see, the Gemara is suggesting that in this case of par and sawyer, remember again, a very specific case. I have a par for Yom Kippur, I lose them, I go ahead and appoint appoint replacements. Then I find the original ones. Rabbi Huda says you have to let them die. You have to let the original ones die. And we're trying to figure out why. So now the Gemara is suggesting, because halacha l'maisa, Rabbi Huda is concerned that you'll go in and come to keep this sa'ir for next year, and the sa'ir will be aged out. The sa'ir will be aged out. What about the par? We're concerned that if you go ahead and let you keep the sa'ir, let you keep the par, you'll come to keep the sa'ir, and potentially end up offering up as a chatos, a sa'ir that has aged out. But the must understand, if animals age out, there's a different way we deal with them. How do we deal with them? We set them out to pasture. So in other words, Rabbi Huda, still, why are you telling me that the animal has to be left to die? Just put it out to pasture then. Elo amarava gzera mishum takala. So we'll say, now we finally come to the answer. What is Rabbi Yehuda really concerned with? Because we'll say, Rabbi Yehuda is taking a pretty dramatic stance. Remember, Rabbi Yehuda is saying, one more time, I separated out a par and a sa'ir from my Yom Kippur karbanos. Right? The par is the personal offering of the Kohen Gadol. The sa'ir is the communal chatos. I separate it out. I lose them. I go ahead and designate replacements, and then I find the original ones. Rabbi Yehuda says, what do you do with the original ones? You let them die, which means you lock them in a room, you starve them to death, and they die. And we're just trying to figure this out. Why? Why? There are other ways. So we'll say, there are many cases of karbanos that become disqualified for a variety of reasons. And more often than not, we just set them out to pasture. Ryan, what do we do? What do we wait for? Develop a mum, sell them off, use the money for nedava. Why is such a severe approach to this case? Here we go. Ela amarava gzeira mishum takala. At the end of the day, the real concern over here is that these animals may pose a stumbling block. Or now what that means is we are concerned about misuse. Now what does this mean? This nan, listen to this case. This nan, we learned, this was in Shkalim, we learned, the Gemara says, Shkalim also, Ein makdishin ve'in ma'arichin ve'in machrim bezman hazeh. So you are not permitted to make something hektish or create an erech vow or a chirim. So these are all different ways of pledging things to the Beis HaMikdash. We don't do this today. Today means in the absence of the Beis HaMikdash. Then I both say, I know that I can't donate something actively to the Beis HaMikdash, but let's say I say the following. I have a beautiful gold bowl, and I want to say, you know what? I hereby pledge this to the Beis HaMikdash. I know I can't deliver it now, but I would love to set it aside, and when Mashiach comes, I'm going to come and give it to the Kohen to the Beis HaMikdash. The Gemara, the Mishnah says, you're not allowed to do that today. We don't want you making things hektish. We don't want you making erech vows or chirim vows. Im hektish, ve'im hektish ve'herich ve'echrim. And if you did it, what if you made something hektish, or you made a chirim, or you made an erech vow? Behema te'aker. If it's an animal, it should be uprooted. We'll discuss what that means. Peiros ksus v'kelim yirkavu. If it's produce, clothing or utensils, they should be left to rot. Ma'os uklei matachos, and if it's money or metal utensils which do not rot, yolich hanor v'yamamelach, you throw it into the yamamelach. So you see from here that halacha. So let's finish. Ve'izuhi akira ikur, and I'll say, what does it mean if it's an animal? You should uproot the animal. No del safanavi meisamela. You put the animal in a room, close the door, and let the animal effectively die of starvation. So the Gemara says, so what do you see from here? We don't want you having any of these things around because we're concerned that if you have it around, what's going to happen? You're going to come to misuse and misappropriate. Not even intentionally. I must say, you could understand this. Imagine for a moment, you go ahead and you designate an amount of money for the Beis HaMikdash right now, and you put it in your Beis HaMikdash jar, right? And what's going to happen? There's going to be that moment where what? This happens, right? We need some cash, right? And so, okay, I'm going to replenish it, right? Right? I'll put it back. I just want to point out, what happens if you have a tzedakah box in your home, and you're out of cash, and you have in mind that you're going to borrow some money from the tzedakah box and you're going to replenish? Are you allowed to do that? So it's a good cash, right? Technically speaking, you are allowed to do it. Right? You can put the IOU. Is it a good idea? No. Very, very, very bad idea. To even give you, let's say a person has a tzedakah account. Have a tzedakah account. And for whatever reason, one month, I put all my money in Bitcoin, so I go ahead and I need a little cash. Again, I'm going to replenish it. Can you do that? Technically speaking, you could do that. You could borrow money from tzedakah to go ahead and repay it. Again, good idea? No. Very bad idea. So that's the Chazal are saying over here. Technically speaking, can you be makdish something? Can you make an erech vow? Can you make a chen vow? You could do all of those things. But it's a really bad idea because what's going to happen? You're now going to have consecrated stuff lying around your house. And Chazal said, we don't want that. We don't want that because the statistical probability is you're just going to come to inadvertently misuse it. So if it's an animal, let it die. If it's money or any type of metal utensil, precious metal utensil or anything, throw it into the Yam HaMelech. Produce, let it rot. Why? Again, I will say this is what's called mishum takala. Because we are concerned that ultimately, again, it will pose a stumbling block. So the Gemara says, interestingly enough, takala demai. What's the stumbling block? Itakala dehakrava. So therefore, let's loop back for just a moment. Now, we begin to understand Rabbi Yehuda's shita. Right? What does Rabbi Yehuda say? Therefore, if you have this extra par and sa'ir, we don't want you holding on to it for a year. Because what's going to happen? You're going to end up inadvertently misusing it. So therefore, again, Rabbi Yehuda, this is better to let them die now than to hold on to it to a year. Because it'll become a stumbling block. So the Gemara says, okay, takala demai. What are we concerned about? So the Gemara says, itakala dehakrava. If we're concerned that if you hold on to the par and serve Yom Kippur, over the course of the year, you may come to offer it up as a different carbon. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, afilu kol rayos nami. So we'll say, why wouldn't I have that concern by any case of a sacrificial animal that's set out to pasture? Now, as we'll say, we know that one of the ways in which we deal with disqualified sacrificial animals is we put them out to pasture. So why don't you say that in general, we should never allow you to put anything out to pasture because there's a concern that if the animal is alive, you may come to offer it up, inadvertently offer it up as a carbon. So the Gemara says, Ita kala de giza va'avoda. And again, if you're concerned that perhaps you may come to shear the animal, the sa'ir, or you may come to work the par, afilu kol rayos nami. Afilu kol rayos nami. So we'll say, here's what the Gemara is fascinated by. If you're really concerned, right, mishum takala, that you're going to come either to offer up the animal, or you're going to come to shear the animal, or work the animal, then I don't understand. That should be a concern. Anytime Chazal put forward the Eitzah of what? Yira, let it graze until it develops a boom, and then let the money go for Nidava, why is that ever a viable option? After all, at the end of the day, shouldn't we be concerned about inadvertent, inappropriate usage of the animal? To which the Gemara says, no. Li'olam takala dahakrava. In reality, the reason we don't want you holding on to the par and the sar till next year is why? Because we're concerned that you're going to inadvertently come to offer it up. Why doesn't that apply to other animals? V'hanoch d'lav b'nei hakrava ninhu lo tarid b'hu. Hach debas hakrava hi tarid b'hu. So we'll say this is very interesting. We'll say in general, when are animals put out to pasture? When are they put out to pasture? When there's a mum. Right? Often when there's, again, if you look at the paradigmatic case, often when there's some type of disqualification in the guf of the animal. We'll say, interestingly enough, in the par and sa'ir, is there a disqualification in the guf of the animal? No. This animal is these animals are perfectly sacrificially fit. So the Gemara posits, when an animal is perfectly sacrificially fit, that's when our concern is that halacha l'maisa, you may come to go ahead and offer it up. Furthermore, again, I will say, you would be holding on to these animals, literally actively holding on to them for sacrificial use for next year. The Gemara says over here, literally, the Gemara says, Hanach delo b'nei hakrava lo tard b'hu. These animals, which are not really fit to be offered, a person doesn't really involve themselves in. Hach, but this parent sire, the bas hakravahi tarid ba. Ultimately, again, these animals which are sacrificially fit, a person will engage in. I will say, if you look at Rashi says over here, Hanach delav b'nei hakrava ninu, sharos enon omdos likariv hani asman ela demehen, lo tarid b'hu, eno maharher ba'akravasanu masiach daite me'akrava dido. Rashi, then we keep on about tarbu. We're supposed to listen to this. The Gemara makes a very interesting distinction. In general, when you set animals out to pasture, pretty much those animals already only have financial sanctity. For whatever the reason, whether because they have some type of mum or some other kind of disqualification. And remember, the only thing you're waiting for, if it doesn't have a mum, is for the development of a mum. So now you can actively sell it off. So really, in general, when you're putting animals out to pasture, those animals are not really made to go onto the Mizbeach. And therefore, there's no concern that you're going to come to inadvertently offer them up while they are being pastured. Masha'inkin, in the case of the par and the sawyer, what are you doing? You're actively going ahead and setting aside that animal for use for next Yom Kippur. So you're actively cultivating its carbonic identity now over the course of the next year. That's where there's a concern they may come to inadvertently offer it up. So therefore, both say, it turns out that bottom line, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the reason why he takes such a severe stance by the extra par v'sar of Yom Kippur and doesn't allow you to keep it till next year, but says essentially let them die now, is mishum takala. He is concerned that maintaining a sacrificial entity, in this case 2 sacrificial entities, a par and a sawyer, for an entire year for use for next Yom Kippur is asking for trouble. Or the statistical probabilities that you're going to come to inadvertently use it for something illegal, and therefore Rabbi Yehuda says, get rid of it now. So we'll say that's the end of that sugya. The Gemara just mentions, V'takala atzma tanoihi. They both say this general discussion about whether or not we're choshesh for takala. Are you choshesh that if you maintain something consecrated or sacrificial in your home that you will come to inadvertently use it? Is it machlokes tanoim? Desanya chada, because also we learned one brayse says Pesach shelo kara berishoni kara b'sheni b'sheni kara l'shana haba. Well, this one brayse says that if you have a carbon, you set aside an animal as a sheep as a carbon Pesach, and you didn't end up using it for whatever the reason, you could use it for Pesach Sheni. And if you didn't end up using it for Pesach Sheni, what can you do? Use it for next year. So this opinion clearly says that what? You could maintain a sacrificial animal in your home for a prolonged period of time. We are not concerned with any misappropriation. V'tanya idach lo yikarev. Another brayse says, no, if you went ahead and you set aside an animal for Korban Pesach and you didn't use it, you should not maintain it till Pesach Sheni or to the next year. My love, bitakala pligi. Both say, are they not arguing about whether or not to choshesh for takala? In general, the machlokes is, do we permit you to maintain a sacrificial or consecrated item in your home for a prolonged period of time? And are we concerned that you may come to inadvertently misappropriate it? The first brayse seems to say, no, we're not concerned about that. Second brayse says, yes. To which the Gemara says, no, li'olam, lo, d'chuli alma, lo chayshinu l'takala. We'll say, in reality, everyone agrees, I'm sorry, it's a machlokes in the gears over here. Chayshinu l'takala. Everyone agrees that in general, we are choshesh for takala, right? We are choshesh for misappropriation if you keep something consecrated or sacrificial for a prolonged period of time. What's the machlokes? V'halcha, they plug to the Rebbe Rabbana come. If the Gemara says this is very interesting. Here, this is fascinating. The machlokes is the machlokes of Rebbe and the Rabbana. Both say, remember again, Rebbe, what was the machlokes of the Rabbanon? How do you calculate a year? Rebbe said a year is calculated 365 days, right? The Chachamim said it's calculated as a calendrical year. Right? 12 months, miyom liyom. But again, the exact calendrical date, and if there's a leap year, that extra year ultimately goes to, well, in the case of the real estate transaction, to the seller. In this case, it would be to the owner of the animal. But say Korban Pesach must be a sheep or a goat within a year. So the shaila is it even possible to maintain a Korban Pesach till next year? That's the machlokes Rebbe and the Rabbanon. V'lo kasha Rebbe harabanon I vatanya v'chilamos. But one second, I'll say the same brisa that spoke about the machlokes about maintaining a Korban Pesach animal in your home till next year Pesach also spoke about what? Maintaining Korban Pesach money that you set aside to purchase a Korban Pesach this year, but you didn't end up using it. What do you do with it? One brayse said, no problem, use it next year. Second brayse said, no, you can't use it next year. So we'll say that has nothing to do with machlokes Rebbe and the Chachamim, because again, it's money, it's not an animal, there's no aging out issue. Elav shmamina b'takala pligi shmamina. So rather, we'll say, what do you see? Indeed, there is a machlokes. So we'll say, in general, what you begin to see over here, the way the Gemara ends off is that halacha lemaisa, there is a machlokes about chashinan l'takala or not. So again, there's a fundamental machlokes about, do we want you, or do we allow you to maintain something sacrificial or consecrated in your home for a prolonged amount of time? Are we concerned that if you keep it around, you will end up inadvertently misusing or misappropriating it? So that, the Gemara ends off by saying, that indeed is a machlokes tanaim. To loop it all the way back, Rabbi Yehuda holds that the halacha is yes. Rabbi Yehuda holds that halacha l'maisa, we are concerned about sacrificial misappropriation, and therefore in the case of where you have additional or surplus sacrificial animals, Rabbi Yehuda will hold that they must be actively left to die. We don't want you holding on to them for a prolonged amount of time, for we are concerned about misappropriation. But understand, there is another side to the coin. There are other opinions, and not everyone agrees with Rabbi Yehuda's assessment. Incredible. We'll say, now we come to another Mishnah. We'll say an exceptional sugi ahead of us. Again, back to the service of Yom Kippur. So we'll say, remember again, when we last left the Kohen Gadol, what was he doing? What did he just do? Right? So good. Goral, we saw the Goral. The last thing we saw him do was pour out the remnants of the blood by the base of the Mizbeach. Right? The last thing he did, Rabbi was, he went ahead and he took the right, remember, he finished the blood service inside Kodesh HaKadoshim, in the Kodesh, on the Mizbeach, comes outside, pours out the blood by the Yisod, by the base of the Mizbeach. Now we pick up. Balo Eitzos HaMishlach. So we'll say, remember again, he has already done the Goral, right? The Goral already occurred earlier on. Had another Goral already occurred earlier on? Because you remember again, I will say, what blood was he sprinkling? Right, the seer and the par. Now the par is not part of the goral, but the seer is. Remember again, he's already sprinkled the blood of the seer la Hashem. So the goral already occurred. The seer la Hashem is already again alav shalom, right? Alav shalom, right? Zichron livracha. Now he's coming out to the seer mishtaleach. So listen to this. Balo eitz seer mishtaleach. He comes to the seer mishtaleach, which is the seer that is sent out. Now, I both say, we have not yet gone through the process of what happens to that soyer. So now comes out seer mishtaleach, v'somech shtei yadav alav, and he places his two hands on the top of the sar, umisvada, and he recites vidui. So we'll say now, another vidui on the head of the seer mishtaleach, v'kach haya omer. And this was the vidui of the Kohen Gadol of Yom Kippur. Kach haya omer. Ana Shabbos say, by the way, these words send a little bit of a chill in our neshama, because we'll say, it's almost Yamim Noraim. Isn't that incredible to think about? It's Tammuz, Av, Elul. The year is coming to an end. Elul is upon us. The Zman HaTshuva, right, is already. The Zman HaTshuva is always upon us. But isn't it incredible that again, as we come to the end of this year, we begin to ready ourselves for the Yemei Adin, we get to see the vidui of the Kohen Gadol, Misvada, the Kachaya Omer, Ana Hashem, please Hashem, Chatu, Avu, Pashu Lefanecha, Amcha Beis Yisrael. So let's remember again a little, we've seen this already, Ana Hashem, please Hashem, allow me the opportunity to tshuva, Chet, Avon, Pesha, remember again, Chet, inadvertent sin, right, Shogeg, Avu, Avon, intentional sin with the intention to satisfy a desire. Pesha, intentional sin, ultimately with intention to rebel. So we go from least severe to most severe. That was the machlokes we saw earlier on. Chatu avu pashu lefanecha amcha beis Yisrael. You're children of Israel, right? Beis Yisrael has sinned before you. Ana Hashem, kaperna lechatoim v'la avonos v'la pesham. Please Hashem, atone for the chet, the avon, the pesha, shechatu v'sha'avu v'shepashu lefanecha ana amcha beis Yisrael. Please Hashem, atone for the sins of Klal Yisrael. Moshe Avdecha, as it's written in the Torah of Moshe, your servant, Leimar. Kiba Yom Hazeh Yichapra. It's incredible, right? You hear it all say. So Kiba Yom Hazeh Yichapra Alechem Litar Eschem Mikol Chatosechem Lifnei Hashem Titaru. Because as the pasuk says, for on this day, I will atone for you to purify you from all of your sins before Hashem become purified. Va'kohanim va'am ha'omdim ba'azara. And I will say, when the Kohanim and the people who were standing in the courtyard, Kishayushomim Shem Hamafurash, Shiyotzi pi Kohen Gadol, when they hear the name of Hashem, because most of the Kohen Gadol would not say Hashem. The Kohen Gadol would say the actual name of the Ribbon Shalom. When they would hear this, Shiyotzi pi Kohen Gadol, Hayukorim u'mishtachavim v'noflim al pneihem. They would literally again bow down, or should say bow, prostrate, and fall on their faces. Va'omrim Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuso Liolam Va'ed. Everybody say when you heard the name of Hashem in the Beis Hamikdash, they didn't say Amen in the Beis Hamikdash. They said Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuso Liolam Va'ed. Incredible. The Gemara says Masru Lemisha Hayam Olicho. So we'll say that at this point in time, after the vidui on the Sir Mishtaleach was done, they would give it over to the guy who would take it to. We're going to see where he's taking it to the midbar, to the desert. So the Gemara says, who was this guy? Hakol ksherin leholicho. So I'll say everyone is permitted. In other words, everyone is permitted to go ahead and take this Shem Mishtaleach. Meaning, it does not have to be done by Kohanim. Doesn't have to be done by a Kohen. Elo sha'asu akohanim gidolim keva v'lo hayu manichin es Yisrael leholicho. Both say this is incredible. However, the Kohanim prevented anyone other than Kohanim from taking it. I also just want to point out, so the Siyar Mishtaleach can be taken out of the Beis HaMikdash into the desert by anyone. But the Kohanim themselves kept the service for the Kohanim. Take a look at Rashi. El sha'asu Kohanim keva shehirgilu la'asos sakohanim keva lios molichim oso v'lo hayu beizin shal Kohanim manichin as Yisrael la'olicho. So I'll say this is incredible. The Kohanim kept this service for themselves. They did not allow anyone else to do it. So it turned out that the person who would take the Sir La'azazel, more often than not, we'll see there was one exception, more often than not was always a Kohen. So the Gemara says, Am Rabbi Yossi, Maisa v'holicha Arsala. One time there was a guy, Arsala, who went ahead and took the Sir, V'Yisrael, and he was not a Kohen. Right, he was a Yisrael. So I'll say, so what's interesting is, Rabbi Yossi is saying, the point that the Gemara is making is, yeah, one time there was Yisrael. One time there was Yisrael, but in general, the Kohanim kept this avoda for themselves. The kevesh asulo, so I'll say, this is actually incredible. They made a ramp. V'kevesh hayu asulo. So we'll say, if you look at Rashi, Rashi says, kevesh kimin maila asulo shugavoa v'yotzi derech osa kevesh chutz la'azara v'chutz le'ir. We'll say, this, by the way, must have also been an incredible architectural feat. What they did is, they built a ramp from the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash, essentially out of Yerushalayim. They both say, now we're going to see essentially what happened over here is, they wanted the man who was taking the Seir La'azazel to be able to exit the Mikdash and exit the city without interruption, or really we're going to see without harassment. That's really there was a harassment issue. So they made a ramp, which also must have been a very large ramp to be able to get him out. But it's more of what? It's not really a ramp. What is it? It's a bridge. Because also remember again, the Beis HaMikdash is in Har HaBayis. Right, the Beis HaMikdash is on a mountain. I mean, not a mountain. It's on an elevated area. So it really is. It seems almost reminiscent of what other bridge do we learn about? The Paraduma. Excellent. That's what it sounds like a lot. Also, now the Paraduma, you're linking between two. Right, you're linking a valley. You're spanning a valley. You're going from Har HaBayis ultimately again to Har HaZeisim. But Lamaisa, it's the same idea. You're building a ramp to take you out of Yerushalayim. So listen, why did they build a ramp? This is incredible. Because of the Babylonians. What would the Babylonians do? Metalshim bisaro. They would pull out his hair, and they would say to the guy who was taking out the seer, Tol v'tzei. Apparently the Babylonians were quite lebedig. And they would pull out the hair. We're also going to see whose hair were they pulling out. Right? Were they pulling out the hair of they were Jews. These were Babylonian Jews. They were very eager, we're going to see, for the man to get this seir out. Why were they so eager? Because they're both saying that seir was an incredible and important mode of atonement for Klal Yisrael. So the Babylonians, in their zeal to achieve a level of kapara, to achieve a level of tshuva, would harass the guy taking out the seir. Now it literally says, so they would pull out his hair. Now let's say, we're going to see the machlokes, whose hair? Is this the hair of the seir or the hair of the guy? Either way, there was some level of significant harassment going on. Again, harassment coming from a quote-unquote good place, which is they were very eager for the guy not to take his time getting the seir out. Get the seir offered up so he could achieve kapara. In order to save this guy from the Babylonians, they constructed a bridge. Good. So we'll say, now let's go to the Gemara. We'll say incredible. V'ilu b'nei Aaron amkido shechalo ka'amar. They will say, here's the interesting. The Gemara makes an interesting observation. The Gemara says that when the Kohen Gadol does vidui over the seir, if you notice again, it says kaper la'amcha beis Yisrael, but it doesn't make any mention of the Kohanim. So why not? So the Gemara says, Man Tana, Rabbi Yirmiyah, Jalok Rabbi Yehuda, Dik Rabbi Yehuda, Ha'amar Yeshlam Kapara B'sim Mishnah. So we'll say it must be that what? That the author of the Mishnah, the Tana of the Mishnah holds, that Halacha L'maisa, Kohanim do not achieve Kapara through the Soyer. Right? Kohanim have other forms of Kapara, not through the Soyer. Not through the Soyer. That's why the Vidui only speaks out Amcha Beis Yisrael, makes no mention of the Soyer. To which the Gemara says, no. Abai Amra Filu Tim Rabbi Yehuda. No, it could even be according to Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Atu Kohanim Lav Bichlal Amcha Yisrael. What's that? When the Kohen Gadol says Vidui, Kapra La Amcha Beis Yisrael. Amcha Beis Yisrael refers to everyone. So of course Kohanim are included in that. Again, just instead of going ahead and breaking out the multiple factions or groups of Klal Yisrael, we just group Klal Yisrael as one. Amcha Beis Yisrael. Good. Masal Misham Alicha. So let's listen to this. So now remember again, the Mishnah said, we then give it over to the guy. Now so we're going to see the way the Torah refers to this individual is the ish iti. We give this seer over to the guy, and the guy takes it out ultimately again to the desert. And the Mishnah said, anyone is kosher to go ahead and take out the seer la'azazel. Anyone. So here we go. Tan Rabbanon. Ish. Also when the pasuk says ish, lahachshir es hazar. Ish comes to teaching that even a non-Kohen is fit to take out the seir la'azazel. Iti. What does it mean when it calls him ish iti? What's iti? Shehei mezuman. Both say mezuman means that this individual must be appointed yesterday, the day before. In other words, Erev Yom Kippur. In other words, on Yom Kippur Day, you don't say, okay, who wants to take out this soyer, right? But rather, again, this guy, this individual must be appointed as of Erev Yom Kippur. E.T., furthermore, afilu b'Shabbos. But say E.T. also means that what? You take out the soyer la'azazel even on Shabbos. Right? In other words, we'll say, we don't say, maybe there's a problem with hotzah or other things like that. We go ahead and we take out the soyer even on Shabbos. E.T. v'afilu b'Toma. E.T. means afilu b'Toma. So again, we'll discuss exactly what this means. But it sounds like even if the individual, the ish, is tamei, we still have him go ahead and take out the seir la'azazel. Ish, so let's analyze. So we learned out three things, right? Number one, ish teaches me that what? Even a non-Kohen could do it. E.T. teaches me that halach l'mais is done even on Shabbos. And E.T. teaches me that even if it's done, that it's done even b'tumah. We're going to analyze all three of these things. So let's go. Ish lahach shes hazar. So remember, Ish teaches me that even a non-Kohen has the ability to go ahead and do the service of taking out the seir la'azazel. So Gemara says, pshita. I was like, what's the chiddush in that? I'll tell you, I think kapara ksiva bei. The Torah uses the lashon of kapara when it comes to taking out of the seir la'azazel. So I might have thought, just like the kapara done inside of the mikdash requires a kohen, so and then really a kohen gadol, so too the kapara done outside of the mikdash requires a kohen as well. Kamash malon, no. Kamash that Allah chalamaisa, even a non-kohen, ish comes to teach me that even a non-kohen is permitted to go ahead and take this soyer. Next, iti vafilu b'Shabbos. So we'll say when we say iti, you do this even on Shabbos. Lamai hilchasa. We'll say, what is that coming to teach me? So listen to this. Amar Rav Sheshes lomar shim hayachola markiva al ksefo. Because this one teaches me that let's say the soyer gets sick. Let's say the soyer gets sick and it can't walk on its own. What's the halacha? The ish puts the seer on his shoulders and carries it out to the edge of the cliff. It's Shabbos, and there's an issue of hotzah. There's an issue of carrying something from one domain to another. Halacha l'maaseh iti tells me you do the service even if it's on Shabbos. Incredible. So the Gemara says, Kiman, whose opinion does this reflect? The Lo Rabbi Nasan. This doesn't for the Rabbi Nosson, because what does Rabbi Nosson say? Rabbi Nosson Amar Hachai no say es atzmo. What's Rabbi Nosson says in general, there's no problem with carrying any living thing. Why? Because we'll say we assume that a living thing, what's the right word? Repositions its weight. What it means is a living thing carries itself, which means that a living thing helps in the redistribution of its weight, which is why, again, there's, we have the expression of a dead weight, right? That literally, again, carrying something that, carrying a corpse is heavier than carrying a regular person, because a regular person, even a baby, right, subconsciously just redispositions its weight. So Rabbi Nosson would say there would be no problem with going ahead and carrying the seir on Shabbos, because as long as it's alive, so to speak, it carries itself. So which the Gemara says, no, I feel Tim Rabbi Nosson, chala shiny. Even Rabbi Nosson would say, when do we say chai no seir atzmo? That's when a person or a thing is living and well. But if the seir is ill, which is why you're carrying it in the first place, it could very well be that it's not really helping in the redistribution of its weight. And therefore, again, that's like carrying dead weight. Kamash Malon, the halacha still is you're allowed to carry it even on Shabbos. So the Gemara says, just as an aside, Amara from Zos Omeres, Erev Avot Salah Shabbos, Vein Erev Avot Yom Kippur. And both which you see over here is that halacha lemaisa. That what? See, here's what's interesting. When is, according to the Gemara right now, when is carrying an issue? Only when Yom Kippur falls out on Shabbos, which sounds like Yom Kippur by itself. There is no problem of Hotzah, and there is no problem of Erev Chatzeros, Erev Tchumin, and therefore, again, the only problem of carrying the animal would be when Yom Kippur falls down on Shabbos. I will say now, I'll tell you, halacha l'maisa, we don't paskin that way, right? Halacha l'maisa, Yom Kippur is Shabbos Shabboson. So whatever applies on Shabbos applies on Yom Kippur as well. So the truth is, this idea of carrying the animal if it was sick is an issue whether Yom Kippur falls out on Shabbos or the Yom Kippur is just a regular day. Halacha l'maisa, we will see that indeed that is the psak halacha, that you are permitted to go in and carry the serf if it becomes sick. Again, we'll see in the Rambam in just a moment. Next, iti v'afilu b'tumah. The Gemara said iti, you could go ahead and do it even b'tumah. What does that mean? So my hilchasa, Amar Rav Sheshes lomar shem nitma mishalcho nichnas tamei la'azara u'mishalcho. Rabbi say, isn't this incredible? That halacha l'maisa, that if the guy, what we call the ishiti, was appointed ultimately again to take out this soyer, if he becomes tamei, we still have him do the avoda. Isn't this incredible? If he's tamei, we still have him enter into the azar, to the courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash, in order to get this soyer and go out and do his avoda. That's what it means, iti. He is appointed for this mission, and even if he becomes tamei, at the end of the day, halacha l'maisa, he still goes ahead and takes out the sar. So I'll just tell you, this is how the Rambam paskins like all of these statements. This is in Perek Hey of Hilchos Avodas Yom Kippurim. So listen to this, halacha yutes, chala sar, if the sar becomes ill and unable to walk on its own, markiva al kseifa v'afilu b'Shabbos. You can carry, right, the ish iti carries the sar even on Shabbos. Good. Actually, you know what? Before I get to that, let's do a few more cases. Shalos Rabbi Eliezer. So we'll say jumped ahead a little bit. So we'll say, so just remember the three drashas. Ish teaches me that even a non-Kohen could go ahead and take out the soyer. The Havamina was, it says, kapara by sir. I might have thought that requires a Kohen. Kamash Malon, the Ish who takes out the soyer could even be a non-Kohen. That's Aleph. Beis, even if the sir, iti, even if the sir goes ahead and we still do it on Shabbos, meaning that even if it gets sick, it has to be carried, you still do it on Shabbos. And number three, iti, even if the ish becomes tamei, he still executes his shlichos. Incredible. Weiter. Shalos Rabbi Eliezer. Let's listen to this case. They asked Rabbi Eliezer the following question. Chala, ma'usher kivak seifon. Rabbi Eliezer, if the seir la'azazel gets sick and can't walk on its own, can the ish carry the seir on his shoulders? Amr lahem, Rabbi Eliezer said to them, Yachol hu laharkiv ani v'atem. Rabbi Eliezer says, don't worry about it. The sire is so strong that you and I could ride on the back of the sire. Okay. Chala mishalcho. What happens? They asked Rabbi Eliezer, what happens if the ish becomes ill and therefore can't execute his agency? Ma'u sheyishalchena biyad acher. Can Rabbi say the ish appoint another ish to execute the shlichus? Once you hear this case, Reuven was appointed to be the ish to carry out, but to lead out the Simish Shaliach. Reuven gets sick on the way. Reuven gets sick on the way. Can he go ahead and tell Shimon, you go ahead and you take this here the rest of the way? Amar lahem, Rabbi Eliezer said, Ehei b'shalom ani va'atem. Rabbi Eliezer said, so they're asking Rabbi Eliezer the Shaila, can Reuven appoint Shimon to finish up the shlichus of taking out the Sir La'azazel? To which Rabbi Eliezer said, everyone should just be healthy. Okay? Dachvo v'lo meis. What happens if they pushed the seir off the side of the cliff and the seir doesn't die? Sorry, this one resilient seir, right? The seir does not die. Moshe, that's what Eliezer. Can you go down and kill the seir? Or is there a din of going down and killing the seir? Amar lahem, ken yovdu kol ayvecha Hashem. Rabbi Eliezer said, all the enemies of Hashem should perish. So what was it? So they asked Rabbi Eliezer 3 questions, and again, he did not give an answer to any of them. Each time he deflected the question. The Chachamim paskin in all these cases. If the seir gets sick, you can carry the seir. If the shaliach who's taking the seir la'azazel gets sick, he can appoint someone else. So the shaliach could appoint another shaliach. Similarly, again, if you push the seir off the cliff and the seir does not die, yered acharav v'yimisenu. You go down and you kill the seir. Nabo said that is indeed how the Rambam paskins in all 3 of these situations. If the seir gets sick, you can carry it on your shoulder. If the shaliach gets sick and can't execute the shlichos, he could appoint someone else. And if you push the seir off the cliff and it does not die, you go down and you kill the seir. Okay? Continue with the dialogue of Rabbi Eliezer. Shalos Rabbi Eliezer. Ploni ma'ali olam haba. Let's say this is incredible. He asked Rabbi Eliezer, Ploni, they pointed out to a particular guy, and they said, does that guy have a portion in the world to come? So we'll say, so what were they asking Rabbi Eliezer? If you look at Rashi, Ploni ma'ali olam haba, al adam echad shalhu, ma ma'asav beinecha. So we'll say, so they said to him, they asked him about a particular guy, about his behaviors. That guy, are those behaviors kind of like the kind of behaviors that get you into Olam Haba, or Chas Shalom cause you to lose your portion? And Rashi points out, others say, they were asking about Shlomo HaMelech. Now the Navi says that Shlomo had too many wives, and many of them were worshipping idols, and they turned his heart away from Hashem. And the Navi actually says Shlomo didn't have a portion in Olam Haba. So the Gemara was trying to highlight the unfortunate sinful behavior that Shlomo HaMelech had allowed into his home. So others are saying that they were asking Rabbi Eliezer, does Shlomo HaMelech have a portion of Olam Haba? So again, but we'll just go with the Pasha Pshat. They saw a guy in the Shuk, and they were asking Rabbi Eliezer, does this guy have a portion of Olam Haba? Are his behaviors the type of behaviors which are Olam Haba worthy? So Amrlei, Lo Shaltuni Ela Al Ploni. So Rabbi Eliezer said, don't go ahead and ask me about this guy, ask me about a different guy. So I will say, once again, he's being evasive. So does the shepherd have the right to save the sheep from the Ari, from the, we'll say, we'll stop over here. We'll pick up with this. Okay, we'll have a lot to do tomorrow, Mir Hashem. We'll say, we will explain Rabbi Eliezer's very strange behavior in Mir Hashem in tomorrow's daf, an incredible sugi ahead of us. Shkach Rabosai. Why the Gemara skips?